holding this hearing, very important hearing. Question for the panel. We have been presented with testimony of radicalization occurring in Los Angeles, Illinois, and New York, the prison systems, among others. The dirty bomber, Jose Padilla, was radicalized, I believe you referred to, and then associated with the radical mosque in my home state of Florida. Does radicalization associated with prisons seem to be more prominent in particular states, regions, or hot spots? And then also, to what extent do facilitators of prison radicalization move among and throughout various prison systems and areas? And what can be done to curb geographic spread of prison radicalization?
I don't think it's contained just to certain cities or certain states. I think it moves nationwide. Radicalization, particularly Islamic radical ideology, moves throughout. It can work in the county jail, it can work in the state jail, it can work in the federal prison. I think what has to be done is, again, to recognize it as a problem. We call it a problem not because there's 5,000 individuals being converted every 5 minutes or something like that. It's very selective. It's a process. We have to recognize the process. We have to be able to interrupt the process, and we have to be able to have some sort of standards nationwide in the vetting of clergy.
I would say that the way I look at the issue of prison radicalization that we're talking about here today, it's part of an overall situation that we've been experiencing in this country of homegrown radicalization and domestic jihadists. I mean, this is an issue that we once thought was never going to come to our shores, or that we were going to have a problem with here, that was overseas in Great Britain or in Spain or some countries in Europe or overseas. That was the thinking then, even around 2005 when we had the JIS case. Certainly since that time, we've seen that there is a problem of homegrown radicalization and domestic jihadism in this country. It is not only within the prison walls, it is certainly on the outside in the communities. And just as you can have a homegrown jihadist in any city or any location or state in this country, the same is certainly true in any penal institution, state or federal, throughout the United States. They're not mutually exclusive. They're part of the same overall evolving threat, in my opinion.
Would you like to respond, sir?
Well, I think you saw in 2009 we had a huge ramp up in homegrown terrorists. We had 85 individuals involved in 13 plots. That signaled a trend that we had. And I think in the prison system we were beginning to establish collection mechanisms for this phenomena, but they're not widespread yet. And I think when we do put those systems in place, we're going to see what we've seen on the outside, inside prisons. It is still low volume, but the issue is high consequence, very high consequence and high intensity for America if we don't address this problem. And I think we are on the front end of this problem right now.
Thank you.
Right.
Anyone else?
I would agree with Mr. Downing that my bottom line is that prisons are infertile grounds for radicalization. You think of the case of Kevin James. What's not clear is if Kevin James had been outside of prison, whether or not he would have had the same orientation and been much more capable of acting on it. And I believe that's likely to be the case.
I'd like to address that point, having prosecuted the case. The issue that we had with Kevin James was that he orchestrated this jihadist plot to target Jewish persons in Southern California and United States military personnel. He quarterbacked the plot. He created the plot from the prison. And so the reality is the danger wasn't whether he was inside or outside the prison. From prison, the key takeaway from the case is that from prison, he was able to set up and set out a operational cell of would-be jihadists in the streets of Southern California. So there can be no question in my mind as to his commitment to wage that jihad based on the evidence in the case.
Thank you.
I'd like to go further on that. And with respect to the organization and the ability to operate, Mark Sageman wrote a book, Leaderless Jihad, talking about the future 21st century jihadists, that it lacks leadership or lacks organizational structure for operation. When you plug it into a prison system that has an ability to communicate, an ability to send messages, an ability to operate beyond the prison walls, it's like a USB port. The committed jihadist just has to plug his flash drive right into it, and he can operate.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have any time left, but thank you for holding this important, necessary hearing. Appreciate it.
Thank the gentleman.